Hello, everyone, and welcome to Book Talk with Cara. I am so delighted to have my friend Kate Angelo here with me as we celebrate the release of her latest book, Girl Lost. I gotta tell you, this book is a race. And it's cutting edge technology combined with romantic suspense, but really the suspense is ramped up from the beginning. And Kate, I want you to tell people about yourself, but first I want to start with this is like cutting edge. You've got 3D printed organs and all kinds of crazy things going on. How do you come up with these ideas? Your mind must be a really twisted place, friend. And yet you come across as so sweet. How does that work?
I am super sweet, but I'm also a big nerd. And so I love technology, and I have always really loved technology and been reading scientific journals and education. And my older two boys, there were the scientific ones, and then we had the younger two kids were all sports. And so it was a little bit different educating them. And so I was constantly trying to keep up with my older boys who were reading this technology and everything and learning about it. But I actually I started thinking about this a little bit because we were talking about how they are actually doing these things. And there's a little bit of ethical issues that come up
Yeah,
with, and I remember when I was very young and just out of high school and they were cloning the Dolly the sheep.
yeah,
And there was
exactly. That was huge.
Oh, that was huge. And everyone was like, oh, this is the beginning of the end, and we're all downhill. And yet we still don't have humans that we know of walking around being cloned and things like that. And so I really thought about how beneficial it could be, because one of the things that they're doing is trying to grow lab-grown meat so that they
Mhm.
could feed starving nations. I really don't think that is what people will do with it, though. I think that it'll become a technology that someone holds and doesn't share and tries to make a huge profit off of it. And so that kind of was the spark for the book. Yeah, it would be great if we were only doing this to save millions of people from starving, but we could do that now and we don't. And so I feel like there's always something behind, there's always another layer. And then behind that, there's another layer. And behind that, there's another layer. And so if we keep pulling back those layers, we can see that not everyone has the best interests in mind. So
I think it makes me think of the latest Spider-Man movie where you had the three Spider-Mans all coming together, and I loved that. But it also showed like the human side of some of the villains and how often there was, and it's something as writers we're always talking about, how
Mhm.
every villain at some level thinks they're doing the right thing. And they started with something, especially when they're on that edge of science, where they were trying to solve a problem. They were trying to save somebody. They were
Mhm.
trying to fix something. And that's really kind of what's coming out in Girl Lost is they're trying to solve a real problem that confronts people. I was just reading an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about one of their editors who has this incredibly rare cancer and talking about the what about all those cancers that any one of them has 300 people in the world that have it, but when you put them all together, it's 30% of cancers. And so individually, they're really small. Together, it's a lot of
Mhm.
cancer. So for those individual families, it's a big deal. And that's what I was confronting when I was writing Lethal Intent. And that's kind of what you're doing with Girl Lost is you've got these small pockets that for the families who are experiencing them, they're devastating. They're absolutely devastating. But for the rest of the world, it's not breast cancer or skin cancer or something that everybody's being confronted with. So when you're in the middle of it, it feels very lonely. And there aren't the research dollars behind it because it's not something that we're all seeing and experiencing. So then sometimes it does feel like you've got to push the envelope
Mhm.
potentially a little further than you would otherwise because there's just not this public outcry. How does
Yeah,
that show up?
absolutely. Yeah, I actually had this conversation when I was really young, and I've been pro-life my whole life, but I had this argument with on our debate team actually, and we were talking about taking the pro-life stance and as stem cell research is. And we started talking about that, and I just remember some of the questions that kind of come up in the arguments that came up as we're trying to plan for this of if this was your child and you knew your child was going to go blind or live with this their whole life, they could never it would always, they wouldn't get to take a sick day. They wouldn't get to just, today's the day I'm just going to eat junk food and let my life just be. Like some of us get that luxury, and they don't have that luxury ever. And so they're like, would condemn them because you might be
Hmm.
able to save them and stop them. You might be able to eradicate it completely. And I was like, still going, but what's the cost? What is
Yeah.
the actual cost of what you're doing? And I think that that's a real ethical dilemma. And I know as a college professor, you're probably very familiar with taking ethics from a Christian perspective and a non-Christian perspective of ethics. And you get yourself into some pretty, I don't know, you just go mad trying to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So for your characters, though, in Girl Lost, you've got young women who are disappearing on the streets and
Mhm.
they're trying to find them. But then you also have, so there's a lot of really dicey situations. And so it starts out looking like it's just any other missing girl kind of story. And then it quickly spirals into something that could be much deeper. And you've got this second chance romance. So why did you choose second chance?
I love the second chance romance because I feel like so in my line of work, we have a nonprofit and we teach marriage and relationship skills. And I feel and fully believe that young love is one of the best loves to have because you still have all of that passion, the emotion, and things like that. And if you are two well-meaning, well-charactered people at that age level of teenage, and I know a lot of moms out there are cringing because they're like, I could never imagine my 14-year-old being in a relationship even though they probably are in a relationship that you may or may not know about, like that. And that's the majority of people. But the giving them the skills so that they can have a great relationship at any age is great because you grow up together. And so instead of this is what I'm looking for because this is who I am, and I need these people to be like, you grow up with a friend and a companion, and you cover all the areas of love instead of just trying to find somebody for companionship because you're getting your biological clock is ticking or some other reason. You finally have spread all your seeds, as they say, and sown all your I forgot
Wild
what that
oats. Your wild
sowed your
oats.
oats. There you go.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. You've finally done all that, and now you're looking around, and everyone else has children, and their life has already gone on, and you're going, oh wait, I haven't found anyone yet. And I know that's some people's lives, but I really feel that young love sometimes is lasting love because you don't forget that, you don't forget the passion, you don't forget that. And even though your character might not be fully developed, your morals and you haven't had that life experience, sometimes it's a lasting love that can just transcend time. I know people who were I think they were 17 and 18. They only knew each other for 3 weeks and they got married and they're going on 47 years.
Yeah.
And they openly talk about, yeah, we had a lot of problems, but it was our friendship and our commitment to Christ and our willingness to see this through and stay together. And I don't know. So I guess I just really love those young love, but also second chance romance, though, because sometimes that just doesn't ever, that flame doesn't always go out.
Yeah. And it's rewarding when it comes back around and you have to deal with everything that happened in between. And
Yeah.
you're like, but it's worth it
Yeah.
because there is that memory of what was, and it's worth coming back to. Yeah, my husband and I are coming up on 30 years in January, and we met when we were 16 and 18. And there was long distance between us for a few years, but it's definitely that foundation of friendship and that young
Mhm.
love gets you through all the intervening stuff that happens. So,
Yeah. I
but
mean,
that
that's
choice.
yeah, that's part of one of the things that I think it's a societal shift, but we don't really talk about it in the book or anything, but we've invented something called adolescence. And so whereas we were born in Jesus's time, we were born to really grow. When you're 13, you're a man and so this is where you start building your life. And when you leave here, you are going to be a man who can take a wife and give her a house, and that sometimes happened when they were 20 and they started working on it way back here. And I know people that they're 20 years old and their mom is still paying their car insurance and cell phone because it's they just don't want them to be grown-ups. And I'm one of those people too, by the way. I still have at least one on my cell phone plan, but it makes financial sense sometimes.
Yeah.
So
But
But
it's all about launching adults. It's all
yeah,
about
letting
getting them
them
on
be
their own.
adults. And
Yeah.
so I think that in Girl Lost, at least, I wanted to talk about those things in a very high level sort of way where we're looking at it from the perspective of these people were kids who made mistakes, who were given a second chance, who grow up to be in law enforcement. So each of the found family, they feel like siblings because they worked through that adolescent stage together with someone who set them up to be
Mhm.
adults. And but even as they come to the page as adults, they still have all of this pain and baggage and things that they're healing from. And then you get to walk through that with them as well. And I think that's something that we miss is that just because you
Yeah.
look good on the outside doesn't mean you aren't making mistakes or living with the consequences of your past.
Yeah, it's so true. And having that place where you can continue to work through all that and be real and have those
Yeah.
people who know you and love you even when.
Yeah, and call
And
you out for it.
yes, exactly. And can see the times where you're like, okay, Cara, really? Really? Is that who you want to be? You can
Right.
be better than that. And that takes a vulnerability on your part, but also a willingness to be vulnerable on the part of the other person because
Yeah.
we don't always receive it well. And so that willingness to risk on both sides is
Hmm.
so important. And I loved that because you really did kind of create that found family where you could see that and feel that. And that's not always present anymore. And so I loved that. It was really a neat part of the story. So, when you think about your writing, because this is not your first book, you started out writing with Susie May Warren in one of her series with Sunrise Publishing. And then you've had some books with Love Inspired Suspense, right? And then this is your first with Ravel.
Rebel.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank
It's been a
you.
really fast couple
Yeah,
of
it's been very
years.
fast.
So you've been very busy. What's it felt like? I mean, how's this journey felt? Because it's been, I know there's a lot in secret. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden it's been like this kind of rush.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like to talk about this a little bit, but I'm also nervous to talk about it because I was not the typical overnight success, or I wasn't the typical overnight success of an author, which in that means that you've worked on it for up to 10 years and then
Mhm.
you finally hit it big. That isn't really what happened with me. I felt called to write. And I've prayed over one time, I just prayed over what is my word of the year going to be? And it was time. And when I prayed
Mhm.
about it, I was like, what is time? Because we all know that's the one thing we all have limited amount of, and you can never get it back and you can't earn it, so on and so forth. Except for when I started praying about it, God really said to me that if you give me your time, I'll show you what I can do with it. And I was like, all right, I don't know what that looks like, but I was really convicted. So I deleted social media. I deleted a lot of I had some games that I would play in the morning or whatever. And I just gave over to everything that I did was listening to the Lord, praying, listening to the Bible app, just putting more of that toward him. And slowly he started giving me stories and you know how it is, right?
Yeah.
You see the scene in your head, these people are talking, you know it, and you just need to go write it down somewhere. And that's really what happened with me. And so I found some people, I found ACFW, but I hadn't quite joined yet. And my local friends were helping me with, I didn't even know what things were. I didn't even know what publishing was about or that there was really, I knew there was indie publishing and traditional publishing, but I just had no idea that there was all of this going on. And I really set out to learn whatever I could. I joined a couple of the Jerry Jenkins webinars and I just started learning and I wrote my story. And somehow, beyond me, when I did the blind audition for Sunrise to write in Lynette Easton's Elite Guardians, she picked me to write the first one, and I was like, wait, I don't know what I'm doing. So how is this going to work? I don't know what I'm going to do. And that was really God showing me, you gave me your time. I'm going to really bless that time and multiply it. And he did. And I believe that it's been about 5 years. And I think that Girl Lost I think it's my seventh, or it might be my eighth novel, I think, or eighth published book, I think I should say. Maybe not my full manuscript because I've written others that are still in the editing process. And so it's been a very fast journey, but
Yeah.
I don't think that has it has less to do with me and more about listening to what God tells me to do. And then for me to make it a priority. You're as busy
Yeah.
as I am. busier in most cases because you still have kids at home. And so I am not, I just give God my time and I'm dedicated and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I make it a priority to write the stories.
I love that. And it just also shows everybody's journey is different. And
Mhm.
so when I started writing, it was very much the same type of thing. Okay, now's the time. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, I'm going to start. And then it was a very fast process, which
Yeah.
was not what a lot of people's story is. And then it's been a very deliberate process since then, but it was very fast and
Yeah.
very like lots of books at the beginning and very steady since. And so it is one where you're like, okay, I always feel like I have to say, okay, this is not the normal. This is
Yeah.
not what most people experience, but this is
Yeah.
how God had my story go.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
and at last year at ACFW conference, which is, if people don't know, the American Christian Fiction Writers Conference, I was having this conversation and and a group of ladies were joking. They were like, yeah, you're that unicorn that we've all heard about, whatever. And I remember going upstairs and I was getting ready for the gala and I was looking in the mirror and God said, you're not a unicorn, you're a Job. Because part of this story for Girl Lost is a little pieces of me that I was in a lot of trauma, had a lot of
yeah,
child abuse and neglect growing up. I ultimately ended up in foster care. I aged out of the foster care system. And then I just have this long story that people don't ever even know that I went through. And then this is God triple blessing, quadruple blessing
redeeming.
me and redeeming what,
Yeah,
the cankerworm stole. And so that's the way that I look at this specific process for me. And each person is different, that there's something that
yeah,
they're learning as they write, and mistakes that I've made the mistake of. So many people want your stuff that I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll take this contract and that contract, but I really don't have enough time for that. And so I've had to learn to regulate myself and limit myself in what I can really do. But above all else, I love the author community and the reader community and the writer community. I'm a reader first for sure. And I'm always reading something and learning from when I read. Oh,
yeah.
that's how that person said that. That's what deep POV really means. Yeah, this is what I want to write to strive for the next level.
Exactly. And that's the hard part for me too, because it's, oh, like I just got an email today and I'm like, oh, could I do that? No, I need to get this done first. And if
Yep.
I can get that done, then I can say yes. And so I need to
Yes.
put a pause on that because it's very tempting to be like, oh, I could probably do that. I could probably
Yeah.
get that squeezed in. But I'm like, no, I need to put a pause on it for a minute and
Yeah.
not just say yes because it
Because
should be
we
easy.
you can do all of these things, but then I was actually talking to my friend about this the other day. I was like, I realized that I can do all these things, but you know what the things are that start to slip are cleaning your house, eating,
Yeah.
sleeping,
Yeah.
spending time with your family. And so I've been really intentional the last year. I said no to a lot of
Yeah.
really good opportunities to write with some people and to do some other events. And I had to say no so that I could really focus on not when my kids call or my mom calls and someone wants me to spend time with them, I don't drop everything and run, but I want to not say no as much as I do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a lot of wisdom because it can be. And when you have a
Mhm.
deadline and you have to hit it. And especially if you want to stay in the business, your
Yeah.
reputation has to be that you hit deadlines and you hit them
Yes.
well, that
Mhm.
is with excellence, or
Yes.
you're not going to have a good reputation that's going to continue to propel people wanting to continue to see things from you. But with books like Girl Lost, I think they're going to, because this was a really fascinating read. And I loved how much it was built around like cutting edge technology, which takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. So, as you think about like your writing and things like that, are you a plotter or a pantser?
This is funny. I love to tell myself as, have you seen the Christmas Vacation movies, like the Christmas Vacation? You probably should watch it at least once because it is me like the Clark Griswold who wants to have the great American Christmas. And so he plans all of these events, and every time he plans them, they go way off the rails. And he's like positive the whole time that it's going to work out. And then it does, but not in the way that he expects it to. And that is exactly my process is that I plot, I turn in a synopsis, and then the characters they just take this different direction. And I keep trying to pull myself back to where I'm supposed to be going, but it's just not always the same thing. And so
Yep.
I hate it whenever I have to do a synopsis because I'm like, oh man, is this even going to turn out that way? But I think when I do a synopsis, I try to emphasize more about this is who the character is when they come to the page. This is who they
Yep.
are going to be by the time we get through this. And this is the villain and the motivation, and less about how they're getting there so that I can just let it happen. But the
So
book
you're
that
a
I just turned
planter.
in, yeah, pantser, plotter. I try to plot, but it just turns out being a pantser.
Yeah, I love it. And you hit a point where you can do that versus some publishers really are like, no, we have to have the whole thing. And then you're like, okay, we'll see
Yeah,
what
I do that
happens.
and then I turn it in and I'm like, it's mostly there. It's just that it went off this little direction over here that I didn't expect.
But it's good.
Yeah.
It's
It's just
fine.
that's what the
Yeah.
editors are there for, to go, no, go back to that other
Yeah.
direction. And I think that's the kind of thing that you just I think that's God sometimes.
Yeah.
You have to learn to discern between, is God leading the story or you? And then are you overthinking and overcorrecting because you're scared, or because you really are making it better. So I'm a little bit of a perfectionist in that way.
Yeah. All right, Kate. So where can people learn more about you and your books?
So you can learn more about me and the books at kateangelo.com. It's pretty easy. And if you're interested in learning more about Girl Lost, there's a page on there called Girl Lost, and you can find even a deleted scene that I put out there, and then a giveaway that should be closing in a little while, but there's always going to be that, and a book club too, because there's some deep questions that you can pull out of this book. And I think that Girl Lost it's actually a really great, somewhat different book club book to have as a romantic suspense as your book club pick.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
kateangelo.com.
I love it. All right. Thanks so much for joining me and congratulations again on the release of Girl Lost. It was a great read. I inhaled it very quickly and really enjoyed it. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me.
Thank you.